In this first video on the Logic Know-How series on automation, I'm going to talk about how to enable the view so we can actually see our automation and the parameters and modes, etc., that we need to work with. So you can enable the automation view in three ways. The key command is letter A, and you can see the track heights jumped up, and this is important. I'll demonstrate this again in a moment to show all the information related to automation. And again, I'm hitting the letter A to close it. We have our button up here that allows us to open and close the view. And lastly, we can go up to the mix and show automation. And here it shows the letter A as well. This all does the same thing. My favorite, of course, is letter A, just easiest to grab. It's good to note at this point that enabling or hiding the view on automation does not affect the playback. It just affects the view you see in Logic. So let's go ahead and enable the view again. And I'm using the letter A to do this. And let's talk about track height and width. So track height is important to view all the elements of track automation in the track header. I'm going to go ahead and collapse my track height, and you're going to see just lost a lot of information. And if I keep collapsing, we're going to see everything pretty much disappear except for the power button for turning automation on and off for that track or channel strip. All right, let's go ahead and bring it back to a height that reveals everything. Lastly, our width is important too if we want to see our trim and dB readout over here. And you can see as I narrow it, it all disappears there. So let's go ahead and increase the width and get our information back. So what do we have associated with automation? Well, let's talk about this button here, because this button has our power button, which turns playback of all automation on the track on and off. And it also allows us to toggle our view from track to region. And I'll discuss all of this more in depth here. We're going to keep it on track for right now. Over here, we have our modes, and we have one playback or read mode. And if we click, we get a menu here, and you can see that we have read, which is our playback mode. We have record modes, touch, latch, and write, and then variations of those called trim and relative. And again, I'll explain later on. Let's leave this in the read mode right now. Over here, we have our parameters. And the parameters that you will be able to view are based on the type of channel strip you have and based on the amount of plugins you have in that channel strip. The parameter defaults to volume. Let's go ahead and click and hold, and you can see we get a menu here, and here's pan and volume, and we have display off. Now, display off allows us to turn off the view for an individual track or tracks as we choose, as opposed to the global setting, letter A, which is turning all automation views off. Okay, so let's go up to main here. This is somewhat redundant. You'll see volume and pan are down here. Main is up here. We have volume and pan, and we can see absolute and relative, which we'll talk about in later videos as well. And these have solo, balance, and mute available in this channel strip for automation as well. What's available for automation depends on the plugin, how it's written, and also what you've put in the channel strip. Just for kicks, let's go down here to track number 5, which is another software instrument. We have the arpeggiator for our MIDI effects, we have Alchemy, and we have a channel EQ. So if I look at my parameters down here, you can also see we have smart controls available to us now that we have an instrument in there, something loaded up, and we'll talk about those later. You can see our main menu items now, including insert bypass. The arpeggiator has its own list of automatable parameters. The Alchemy synth has a deep list, a lot of sub-menus here. We have channel EQ, has quite a few as well. Display off, volume, and pan. So that's our view here, and this would again change. We can go to an audio track, a huge amount of plugins. And you can see for each one of those plugins, we have parameters that are automatable here. But let's go ahead and get out of that. Let me go back up to track number 1 here, which is just a simple software instrument track with nothing instantiated. And let's talk about our parallel view in the channel strip. So you can see read here. If I go down here, you see read, but notice the power button. So we can turn this off here on the channel strip, and this will appear in the mixer identically, same channel strip. So we've turned everything off. Read is gray, track is gray. We can turn things back on. They're back in color and in color down here. And our same list of modes down here that we had up here. So if we click up here, you can see the 6 items. And again, if we navigate down here, we have the 6 items available to us as well. So there's redundancy here. And that's nice if you're working in the mixer and want to do something and don't have to navigate back up to the track header in the work area. So I'd like to wrap it up at this point. To recap, you have 3 different ways to enable or hide automation. Going up to Mix, Show Automation, or the letter A, which is the second way, and lastly, our button here, toggling on and off. Again, you will not get any love from the automation view if you have your tracks collapsed, and you'll get limited love if you have the width too narrow. Let's go ahead and collapse this. We have our type of automation you want to view at the track level, which is track or region. We have our modes over here for playback and record. We have our parameters here. And notice, by the way, whichever one is selected is the one that's going to show up here. And we'll talk all about that some more. So I hope this gives you a tip or trick or two on how to view your automation parameters. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.